Hi everyone! As you can tell by the title, I want you to stop producing and I want you to start creating. Now, I don't know about you, but my first association with production, with producing something, is people working an assembly line. I've never personally worked one, but from what I've know of people who have worked in assembly lines, is that it is a very demanding job. It is physically intense, it requires your full attention. And it is essentially soul-sucking from what I know. In contrast, a typical day at the office looks much more comfortable. And while I definitely wouldn't compare the level of physical labor required from an office job to that of an assembly line worker, I would argue that neither of those are good for one's health. Now, what I argue for today isn't a reconceptualization of our work life, but rather I want to take a look at the very concept of productivity itself. And as a recovering productivity advice addict, I can say that at this point in time, I believe many of us are aware of the fact that mindless production is neither conducive to our goals nor to our health. And it is my point that one of the most crucial flaws in our idea of productivity is that we have trouble conceptualizing its purpose. I mean, think about it. The end goal of productivity is to have a product. Something tangible, be it material or immaterial, that you can point to and say, this is the fruit of my labor. So that means we're defining this process by what we hope to gain from it. And by being attached to this result, we set ourselves up for failure from the start. I mean, it's good to have clearly defined goals with targets in mind. I believe that can actually be conducive to achieving said goals. But not when it comes at the cost of stifling our creativity and thereby our ability to achieve the goals in the first place. That sounds like a contradiction, right? That knowing what end result you want to have is actually harmful in achieving that end goal. The problem is that before even beginning our project, we think that we know what success having that product or failure not having that product will look like. This makes sense when writing a report for work where you have to respect certain parameters and head it in by a certain deadline, but not when you have a creative project. Because there's a difference between producing something and creating something. Producing something means taking parts and assembling them in a predetermined way, making them fit into an exact mold. In other words, to make something that isn't unique in any way. Creating something means to take parts and to mold them together in a way that is unique to your own process. And that is what we call art. Creation implies a much more mystic nature to what we're doing. We're not just machines following strict protocol, putting the same exact parts into the same exact positions. We are artists. We reassemble, we remix, we recreate, we reimagine everything we encounter. As humans, that's just naturally what we do with everything we encounter, because we make things our own by putting our unique spin on them. Production feels draining. It feels like we are taking our resources, putting them into this thing, and thereby we deprive ourselves of them in order to create it. But creation is nourishing, because everything we pour into this thing we are creating, we get back 2- and 3-fold just through the process of doing so. Now, this is all great, you might be thinking, but I'm not an artist, so this doesn't apply to me. But I want to invite you to expand your understanding of what art and creation really are. Because yes, an oil painting is art and so is a novel, but I argue that a home-cooked meal that your loved one prepared for you so you would be nourished after a hard day at work is also a creation of art. And so are probably many things you are doing throughout the day that you are just not realizing are art. Honestly, I think there aren't these categories of things where one is a product and one is a creation. I think everything can be a creation. You can create an office report on the yearly revenue on selling paper clips. But if in doing so you're tapping into your identity as a creator and artist, if you're doing it in a way that is unique to you and in a way that is not draining to you, then what you are doing is creating art. Because it's not the result that determines the process, but the process that determines the result. You can paint a technically beautiful landscape painting, but if all you're doing is following exact step-to-step instructions and not really allowing yourself to explore and to trust yourself that whatever comes forth in your creative flow is valid, then what you're doing is you're producing a product. I hope you can see that art isn't something that is never really defined by what shape it takes, and that you, yes, exactly, you are a creator, even if you are right now arguing that you're not. I truly believe that every human being is a creator, because creation is in our very nature. I mean, our ancient ancestors created tools in order for them to survive, and our not so ancient ancestors created the 7 wonders of the ancient world. A German physicist created the forebearer of the screen you're watching this right now. All these are creations, and all these added value not just to the lives of those who created them, but also our lives today. Now, I don't want you to think that just because your creation might not be as grand doesn't mean that it's not as important. Maybe you're just trying to record a 20-second sketch for YouTube and not to create the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and that is completely valid. I really ask you, if you knew that what you are creating is something for the ages, would you approach it with more reverence? And by that I mean, would you respect your own vision more? Or would you just view it as a mechanical process that needs to be optimized, where there is no room for your artistic vision? Now, I hope this wasn't too esoteric, but even if it was, just to humor me, next time you have a project to complete, try tapping into creation instead of production. I'm sure that by now you see how creation is much more satisfying than mindless production. But the same can also be said about mindless consuming of content. So if you're interested in that, check out my last video called "You're a Creator, Not a Consumer." My name is Zhenya. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll see you in the next one.